Today, we're looking at a green ink by Lamy Green. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. It really does help this channel. If you're interested in other green inks, there's a link to that playlist down in the description. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share those results with you. Now, the first three papers are generally the same papers: Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia. Let's take a look at the first one, 90 GSM Clairfontaine. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does shade. If you look at over, it goes from a little dark or a little lighter to a little darker. You look at the middle of quick is just a little bit lighter. Not a ton of shading, but there is some here. 12 seconds to dry. The medium is a little bit lighter than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, better shading. Brown starts dark and gets light, and over starts light and gets dark. 21 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both don't show a ton of color variation. The extra fine shows a little bit more, but there's not a ton in the writing. There is a little. The scrub or the smear for both show that you could recover it if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, the writing samples are all done with this Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, this Jinhao X450 with a medium, and this Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then an Airmail Regal is inked up, used for a day, and then used to take the notes for this video. The second standard paper is 52 GSM Tomoe River. We have some minor ghosting at the medium. There is some bleeding in and quite a bit of show through at the scrubby, but that's not, a big deal. Overall, this is pretty good. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. 20 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 38 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both don't really show any color variation, and we're not getting it in the writing. And the smear test, you are not going to recover this if you smear while you're writing. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's immediately put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this push up. It's very light green at the bottom. It makes me really think that it is a much lighter green, but because the green at the top is so much darker. And there's this kind of purple line all the way across the top of this. Now, the one on the right is let dry for 10 minutes before it's put into water. And it largely looks the same, just not traveling as fast. Not expecting very much resistance here. The last standard paper is 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some shading. Brown looks a little darker, getting lighter as it goes. Quick has a lighter U than the rest of the word, but not tons within here, just little bits. The the medium is about the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, same little bits of shading. The J in jumps is a bit lighter than the rest of the word. The Y in lazy is just a little bit lighter than the rest, and the second part of the W in brown is a little bit lighter. Little bits of shading, not tons. 23 seconds to dry. Now, the scrubby for both do show some color variation, but they show much more than we get in the writing sample itself. The smear test, you could probably recover this. I think it's better in person than on camera. You could probably recover this if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles itself fairly well. That extra fine goes to about a fine, but there's no real blowout. I would feel safe using it in a note-taking situation if I wanted to go back and highlight. That's rather surprising when you look at what happens with water, which is completely reactivating and lifting it off the paper. It's not all gone, but that is only 30 seconds of it being there. Probably the reason it only took water to get this out of my pen. Pen flush does everything that water does and nothing more. There's not a need to go to that. And the 1/3 bleach solution, that's completely removing it from the paper, but again, you don't need that here. For the additional writing samples, the paper is changed up all the time in order to really have more experience with different papers. This next paper we're going to look at is Franklin-Christoph paper. We do get a bunch of bleed spots that are coming through, which is rather surprising because we don't get tons of bleed happening with Franklin-Christoph, but it does happen. It looks like this is all happening with the medium, with the stub, of course at the scrubby, but we're not too worried about that. It wouldn't necessarily stop you from using the back of the page, and it doesn't cause any real ghosting. Just to know it's there, it doesn't touch the page underneath. The 1.1 has a ton of ridiculous feathering. Not a common problem with this paper, but a problem with this ink and paper together. No spread, halo, sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub. It does feather a little bit if you look at the K in quick, the S in jumps, the H in the. No spread, no halo, sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. The medium is about the same tone as the extra fine. It also feathers the entire word quick. The B in brown, F in fox, the word the. There's a lot of feathering here. It's really very surprising on this paper. No halo sheen, no shade, 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows no color variation. We're really not getting it. And the smear test, you probably could not recover it if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Lamy Green has a viscosity of 2.11, making it just inside, but normal. If you're interested in how the viscosity is tested and how that bell curve is made, then there's a link to that video down in the description. The last writing sample is done on black and red notebook. We have no bleeding. That's not a bleed spot. It was a sloppy transfer. No ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shading here. 11 seconds to dry. The medium is about the same tone as the stub, with no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, 16 seconds to dry. Now I forgot to do the medium stuff down here, but the extra fine shows no color variation. Shows more on camera than in person. But we're not really getting much up here. The smear test says you probably could not recover it if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, there is an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal going from 13 to 21 seconds. Lamy Green has an average dry time of 21 seconds, again putting it right at the edge, but still normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Lamy Green, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with an orange ink from Callifolio Inti because I like putting orange with green. So what do I think of Lamy Green? This does offer a little bit of shading and the tone is good. It's very well behaved, a joy to use and to look at on the page. In its darker tones, I don't care for it, but other than that, it is a very nice green. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I think a medium flow fine nib, like the Lamy All-Star with its fine, do very well together here on many papers. I hope you got something out of this video, and tomorrow we're going to take a look at Noodler's Luxury Blue.